Someone said this to me a long time ago, like as an encouraging fact, which is the actor is the only thing on set that can't be replaced unless you have millions of dollars you can recast and start over. But they're the most vital part of your day-to-day operation. If you lose them or if they become discouraged or you can't find a way to work with them, you're, for lack of a better term, totally fucked. So it's so important to be able to work with actors, to seek out directors that you enjoy working with. That's when the work's going to be good.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Emmy Harrington is an actor. She sat down with me on the Upper West Side of Manhattan to talk about the work. Do you have a typical way that you begin your preparation process for a role? Like you get the script, you've already landed the role. Mm-hmm. What's the first thing you do typically?
I make a list of questions that like need to be answered during the process. And a teacher that I worked with years ago named Joan Rosenfels, who's lovely and still teaching, like she would have you prepare by making like a 3-column list. One was questions and imagery, and then one was givens, which means like anything in the script that allows me information that I know is just like right off the bat. So yeah, questions, images on ideas, and then givens. So I always gather that information. That's like the first thing. And then, you know, you try to answer the questions and you try to like lean into the ideas or images and then, you know, integrate the givens. Givens that range anywhere from this is what I do for a living to I have a relationship with X person who I interact with in this way.
But when you start answering those questions, what is being filled up in you that is like...
Yeah, I mean, some of the questions are never answered by anyone and they remain open, and things that you don't know about a character, the same way that there are like things about me that I've never had to ask myself that I might not know the answers to. That might be revealed in time. Other things are just like, you might actually discover them in the script later down the road and be like, oh, that's the answer to that question. I didn't totally realize that. And then the third kind of filling that you do is the questions that you feel like you have to answer in order to do the work. So you make a choice, right? Trying to think of an example, but yeah, at some point you have to say, my character does this. Like, I don't know why my character does this. I don't know why my character stays in this relationship. Why doesn't my character just walk out of the room? Like, what is so important in this room? And that's the question that you have to eventually find an answer to. Otherwise, as an actor, you can't believe yourself sitting in a room with someone who is maybe not great. Like, I remember when I was working on Hurley Burley years ago, there's this scene where she's like telling this abortion story and the guy is just terrible to her. And I was like, I just would walk out of the room. I just would walk out of the room. So I had to find an answer for myself. That was like...
It didn't matter what it had to be an answer. Like,
it was whatever made me believe...
Whatever made you believe,
that I needed to stay there.
It doesn't have to be what the writer's answer might
Not
have
necessarily,
been. You'd like it to be.
Right, exactly. So like, Mamet might not have thought that it was about her wanting to change his opinion because it was important to her, you know, to alter one man's vista of women at large. But like, that was the thing that helped me believe that I would stay in the room and that I would continue to tell the story.
Yes.
Yeah. Those questions, those like bigger questions are much harder. Like when you're just sort of wondering existentially, like what makes this person tick?
Yes.
Or like, what is this person after versus something like, how many brothers do I have? Like, do I have a brother? Was that weird for me? I don't know. And so like those might be revealed on the script, or you just arbitrarily make a choice and be like, yeah, you know, my brother's always protected me, so I'm kind of an open person.
What happens when you make those choices? You fill in the blanks, you feel good, you get on the set, the director says one thing, and you know that the way they filled in
is different than the way you filled in. Yeah, totally. And I mean, I think like it's really different for me going between working on a play and working on a film set, because you inevitably don't have 4 to 6 weeks of rehearsal. Like, I've just never had that. I've had, you know, even in the best case scenario, a day, a couple of hours, a phone call with the other actor. So the way that you deal with everyone's perception of the way things are going is like rapid fire and kind of turns into like a mess very quickly. But you're also confronted with the other actor for the first time, and I think that changes everything. Like, a director, for me, the best thing they can do is make me comfortable with the other actor and make us feel like we know what's going on in the scene together. So yeah, in most cases, I kind of throw all of that homework out the window and just walk into the space and expect to be free to play and know that all of that information is in my body already. I've like integrated it in the best case scenarios. I've had enough time to integrate it. And so, yeah, I kind of like forget the homework and just do it. Like, I just come to play.
I guess that's important to remain loose. That looseness is the important part on the set.
Yeah.
If you're too rigid in your way, it's going to be problems with adjusting to what things happen.
And I think like the strategy is so different too, because when you think about doing a play, you're going to perform it potentially hundreds of times. So the structure of the way like things play out beat to beat, you kind of want it to be ingrained. You sort of want it to be the same so that it's reliable, but you're on set. I want every single take to be completely different if I can manage that, which means like I have to throw the homework away or else I'm not giving anyone what they need.
Right.
Yeah.
Random question, but why aren't you in LA?
I was in LA, actually.
What was it about that terrible town that sent you back here?
You said it right there. I just wasn't getting work, honestly. And I was pounding the pavement so hard, and it felt like no one wanted to work with me. I felt like Dustin Hoffman and Tootsie. I was like, I can't get a job. Like, I just felt desperate, and it was the worst thing on me. And the interesting thing is I didn't actually realize how bad that town for me was until I got to New York. Because I sort of just thought, like, I just need a change. I just want to come to New York to come and to experience something different. And then I got here and I was so happy and assigned with all these agents, and I was going out, and casting directors were so sweet to me and happy to meet me. And then I was like, oh wow, I was miserable, like truly miserable. And I think part of it is I'm so social, I'm so high energy. I really need an environment that kind of feeds me and that I can inject myself into very easily. And Los Angeles I felt really isolated. I don't know that would be the case if I was to go back there now. I mean, my whole family's on the West Coast, and ideally, I mean, I would love to be in a situation on a regular basis where I was working, on the West Coast a number of months a year and maintaining a residence here as well. Yeah. So I'm sort of crossing my fingers that I'm not totally incapable of finding happiness there, because it is sort of part of my bigger vision for myself. But I felt really alone.
And can you just like lay out the differences between the audition rooms out there and here?
Yeah. It almost feels like fast food versus a small restaurant. Like, I just think there are so many people trying to do it out there, and
it's factory farming.
It's totally factory farmed. Yeah. Casting directors were like wary of me as an actor. Casting directors were worried that I was going to be like some weirdo that just got off the bus and was going to like try to hug them and shake their hand and be like, tell me what to do with my career, man. And like, I was just approaching them as a professional, which so many wonderful actors in Los Angeles are trying to do. And they're really stigmatized, and it's like sad to watch.
Yeah,
it is. And I'm sure that not all casting directors are like that. But for me personally, I didn't feel like people were like scared to see me. They were like scared of this actor culture in Los Angeles. And there are so many good ones. Yeah. Again, like, I'm sure that there are great casting directors in Los Angeles for whom, if I had gotten to a place where I had more familiarity, they would not have treated me that way. Right. But as a stranger, I seemed like impending, like something bad was going to happen. And they've just been overwhelmed, There's just so many people there trying to make it without necessarily being educated in the business that I understand why you'd be weirded out by it. But I have not had that experience in New York, like, at all. Wow. I'm not sure why.
Wow. And so what is your approach now with that behind you? Going into audition rooms in New York, like, what's your Do you have like a game plan? Do you have a strategy you use when you go into an audition? Are you getting sick of auditioning? Is it an opportunity to work? You know, like
on my good days, it's an opportunity to work. I get tired of, at this point in my career, especially, like, I've been acting since I was 12 professionally, and at this point, I'm like, when I'm going in for the one-line role on a procedural show where I feel like I honestly just wish I had more meat to chew, I can get tired, but I still absolutely go in and try to make it an opportunity to connect with someone else who's in my business. You know, there's always, you know, the casting directors who see me for those one-line parts are the same ones who bring me in for pilots. So it's like you just go in and you do your job. Right. You have to do your job, and you have to find the fun in it. Otherwise, I still get really excited for things. I've been in for auditions where I was like, I'm just so pumped to live with this character for 5 minutes, and like, fingers crossed, 10, best case scenario, live with them for a day on set. But yeah, I get nervous, like, going in for bigger roles because of that same problem that I'm coming up against, where I'm like, I just want to live in characters longer. And that's actually why I started directing, was I was like, I've been writing screenplays forever, and I just want, again, to like chew a real meal and like bite off a character and live with her for 10 or 15 days, 30 days, 60 days. Yeah. Because it's so fun when you get to like fully develop something.
And let's talk about that. Two Little Bitches, you wrote and directed it. And like you said, part of the inception of this was you wanting to chew on a character for more than a day. But what else was going on in your life? Like, so you had written scripts before, but you'd never really directed something. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So like I come from this huge comedy background also. That was one of the things that I did in Los Angeles when I was struggling to get work. I'd always sort of been I've been a comedic actor in a lot of ways, but that was like a really easy way for me to work, was I like started writing my own material and started doing stand-up, 6 nights a week. Like, I was just unafraid of it, and it was just a way for me to get up and connect with people. So had directed a number of like more comedic sketch work, short films that were more sketch driven. But yeah, in terms of something that felt more dramatic or more robust, I had not really taken that on. I'd had a great time working with so many independent directors who were kind enough to like sort of let me play in the sandbox a little bit with them. So I feel like I learned a lot, and I didn't go in feeling like I was underprepared. But the narrative that really pushed me to want to make a feature was I'd been working on this other film that was going to be really demanding production-wise. So I was like, I need to design something for myself that really feels feasible, because I want to do it. And this story, this personal story, had been brewing for me, which I think a lot of artists in general struggle with, but definitely me as an actor. It was like, I felt like I was supposed to, as a human, and particularly as a woman, like, be either this sort of caricature of like unbridled creativity and freedom and sexuality and, just a slave to my own inspiration and nothing else. And then the other side of me was so rational and like such a producer in so many ways, and was like, I want to work at a nonprofit so that I'm contributing to the world in an appropriate way. I want to make enough money so that I can support my parents if need be, should something happen, God forbid. I want to, be a leader in my community for women. And that means in many ways, like, I need to be a good person and a responsible woman and not to anything and only take up so much space in the world. So then I got this idea of writing a narrative about two sisters, coming from a family where I have 3 sisters, and I've got, one of many sisters, where I use the dynamic of 2 sisters to sort of examine those 2 archetypes. This woman who does not play by the rules at all and sort of like lives her life in defiance of them, and people seem to be really, they cater to that. And then this other one who is trying so desperately to play by all the rules so that she can get what she wants, and realistically, it's not a real version of her. So that's a failure as well. And over the course of the narrative, these 2 women sort of prove that, 1, both of those archetypes are just like garbage. We just don't need them. They're not real people. And 2, they really like need each other. They need each other in order to exist like in a loving environment. So yeah, it really just came out of the experience that I was having. And again, I think a lot of artists grapple with that, especially intelligent artists, which so many of us are. It's like, how do you strike a balance in this world? I think it's a huge problem for women also, because we are just told to occupy as little space as we possibly can, no matter what the circumstance is, even when it's just doing your job as an actor so that you can say, like, I did my job.
Did you want to do both roles?
I did. You know, that wasn't my original idea, but when I met Niev Conti, who was my DP, who's incredibly talented and has a feature coming out soon called Joyride, and she's just brilliant. She brought me the idea where she was like, I really think you should play them as twins. I think we could totally do it. And production-wise, it felt really feasible, except that you have to shoot everything twice.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
And we shot in 10 days, which is a miracle. And Lisa Mann, who produced with me, I went to her saying 12 to 15, you know, like, I would love to get down to 12. And she was like, we're doing it in 10. I was like, you're insane. I love you. Take all the money. But yeah, it was just not, shooting everything twice was not in the budget.
Yeah.
So I don't know, still down the road, I dream of playing twins. I mean, it's such an incredible opportunity to play.
And what did you learn about acting from directing?
Yeah, the better you know the script, the freer you are.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I knew that thing inside and out because I had written it, and it gave me so much freedom, and it gave me the ability to work with such speed. Like, I needed to be as fast as I was, but working on someone else's script, like, you have to have it so integrated at that point so that you can move quickly.
Right.
You know, never had the opportunity to do 5 takes ever. I had to get it so that we could move on for my own sanity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing was, I really wish I had had more time. That was the thing that I learned, was I was like, I can do this in 10 days. And like, that is a testament to every single person on my crew, which was all female. But it's such a pleasure to work with actors. And once you send all of those pieces of the puzzle to your editor, you know, it's over. Yeah. You don't really get to change that much. I mean, the editor is, the art of editing is, not to underplay that. The things that happen in the edit are absolutely fascinating and surprise me every time. But I wish that I'd had more time to play with my actors, because I think that they would have enjoyed it, and I think I would have enjoyed it. I love working with actors. They're just the best.
When I first saw you, it was on the set of the show about the show.
Whoop, whoop.
And I remember when I first met you, because we were tremendously stressed about this scene, and you were very professional and nice and smiling. And like, it helped. I saw it help Caveh, the director. It helped the other people who were awkward in that scene. And I was wondering, is that just you, or is this a thing that you realized works on a set or when you go to work? Just the idea of, I'm going to enter a room in a positive way. Like, is this part of the whole
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think a big part of it is probably me. That's who I am, you know, whether you invite me to a barbecue or if you want me to, you know, do a post-rape scene, like, I will come in prepared to work and prepared to be on the team. But I wonder also if there is like not necessarily a danger in that, but, you know, you always want to be invited back to work. You always want to be invited back to the party or the table or whatever it is. So I try to put my best foot forward in any situation. And I think that that's a skill that a lot of working actors share, you know, like, you want people to want to work with you. There's so many talented people in the world. When you get the opportunity to work, quell your anxiety by being prepared if you can, and be kind and patient, and offer your ideas. Be courageous enough to offer something if you have something to contribute. Yeah, I know a lot of actors who are that way, who are just like, who have their shit together and like show up not smiling arbitrarily, but like, let's do the work. Yeah, let's do it. Let's move on.
You're playing a real person.
Yeah.
On the show about the show. The director, Caveh Zahedi, who usually does not care one bit about what anyone is wearing or what they look like. Mm-hmm. Like Caveh,
literally.
The last scene, he had a full beard. He's clean shaven now. Caveh's like, I don't care.
Yep.
He insists that you come in the same exact outfit for every single time we see your character, and it's a, how would you describe it? A salacious outfit.
Scandalous.
Scantily clad.
Yeah.
This character is mainly a fantasy for Zahedi in a bunch of ways. But she's also like the keys to maybe future for the show.
Right.
It's like this interesting dichotomy of that actually was happening in real life.
Yep.
So but the idea of playing a man's fantasy and having to wear that every time you film.
Yeah.
Like, is this something that's just getting tiring, or because Caveh Zahedi happens to be brilliant, and I think you would agree he's making something kind of interesting here.
Yeah.
And you respect him as an artist.
Yeah.
That doesn't get tiring because of that, or is it actually getting tiring?
Well, I think what's interesting to me, the question that I keep going back to is like why this particular character needs to continually show up in the same ensemble when that's not a through line anywhere else at all. So, that part of it for me just turns on a question mark. And so I sort of walk around with that. I personally don't have any problem being a man's fantasy. I think a lot of the roles that women are offered are that. And I'm just glad that in this case, it's a woman who's like super empowered, and I don't find her to be stereotypical in a lot of other ways. So it's not irritating to me. Yeah. The hard part about giving myself over to do work that is, guerrilla, for lack of another word, is I'm like slipping into this scantily clad costume in a restroom or walking around on the street kind of open without the protections of a set, quote unquote. Yeah. So like that part, depending on how many hours I spend in it, I start to be like, ugh, like I'm still standing around like with my tits out, and it's, it's uncomfortable. Yeah. Because like that's the reason why when you do any of these things, I mean, I don't know that necessarily this costume would be like a pay bump, but when you do film or TV, that's part of the negotiation is like X amount of my body is going to be exposed, so I'm getting paid for that discomfort. Right. Which I'm not in this case being paid extra for the discomfort. I'm just getting paid regular old fares. But yeah, I do wonder like at this point if it's a gag on the show that she's constantly in the same outfit, in which case I'm sort of like, I can live with it. I wonder how the human being I'm being represented feels about it more than I worry about my own discomfort. And maybe it's a good question, and I should be more concerned about the effect that it has on this woman when she sees it. Yeah. Because it's strange for him to lean so far into that caricature of her as a human being when in all of his interactions with her, he doesn't call her by that name to her face. Right. So why is this particular person being represented as a caricature?
Talk to me about Score.
Okay.
Explain what this is.
Score, a live monthly comedy show. The colon after Score is before interpreting epic cinema through comedy and dance. So my family has thrown a backyard variety show for like 16 years. So not since I was a tiny person, but like since I was in high school, basically. And many of the years that we had this backyard variety show, I would perform dances to the scores of movies. I've always been a movie lover. I've always been a really big fan. The first one I ever did was Jurassic Park. And it was just so delicious. And like all of the fantasies that you have as an actor about like getting to play a Laura Dern type character in Jurassic Park, I was like, great, I'm just gonna pull that moment where she stands up out of the Jeep with her jaw dropped and like I'm gonna live in it for a second. I'm gonna like shake the jello on the spoon. I'm gonna like shine a flashlight up at my own face and scream. Like I just did all of these little pieces that felt so iconic and like delicious to me in the midst of this very sweeping epic dance. So yeah, that's what I do. I pay homage to epic films, which have epic scores pretty much across the board.
There's at least four films
a month.
A night, though. I mean, like in one event.
Yeah. So
right?
I pick 4 new films every month. I invite comedians. I pick my comedians, then I send the list of the films to the comedians. The comedians get to pick which film they talk about.
So they talk about the film first.
Yeah. So the structure of the show is like a host introduces the show.
It's pretty good because it gets your mind marinated for the...
That's exactly right. Okay. You basically need like a summary of the plot so that like when I do the thing, it feels a little bit less random. Although I have to say the more random the moment or the more random the film, like the bigger the laughs. But yeah, a comedian comes out, talks for 10 minutes about the film. I've had people do everything from, a character, like I did... The Godfather. And like this comedian, Artie, he came out and like basically did this mob character for 10 minutes and didn't really talk about the film. I've also had people do like a slide presentation of like, reviewing things, hot takes on the plot, mostly like talking about the plot and absurdities or how the film has aged over time, which is really funny. And then like the lights change and my stage manager, the host like sets props for me because I always use props in the dances. And then I come out and I like do this, 6-minute adaptation of the movie.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's really fun.
I mean, it has been gaining a lot of steam and a lot of fans.
Yeah,
right?
it's time for it to move to a different venue. That's what I'm sort of working on for the fall. So I'm taking off July and August and it will reopen in September at a larger venue.
Because you need a larger space for this.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, don't be modest about it.
No, I think so.
Selling out.
Houses. No, it is doing very, very well. And I think like when I first started doing it, it felt so obscure. So last year I did 10 shows, which was, when I sort of looked back on it, I was like, that's 40 movies. Like that's like nothing to like sneeze at, So I wasn't really sure like if people were going to be on board for it, like if comedians were going to be down to come on and do this. Right. And now at this point, I'm like, people are super into this. It is a very niche format and it makes people want to come and watch it. And the fact that the films are new every month, it's like the content is, wall to wall different all the time.
Right. So how important is physicality to your
That's a great question.
Acting work then?
It totally depends on the role. I mean, you absolutely have to be in your body first, like, which nerves are such a big part of that for me as an actor. It's just like, I can sense when I'm not totally centered or don't feel totally prepared when I don't totally feel in my body. But for some characters, it might be 100% about stillness. Like power for this character is in the stillness, is in the silence, taking time and moving slow. That might be, a choice that I make about a really empowered woman who like runs a company or, who is maybe spoken about in the script as being intimidating or a bitch, even like taking that and interpreting it as still. In other cases, like I absolutely have to be wildly physical, especially when you're looking at something that's more like farce, when you're playing a really big comedic character. Even if you're not tripping over your shoelaces, like you have to be able to move your joints and your body. And so that means sometimes when I'm playing those characters, I have to do more prep physically. There's all these cool exercises that you can do. I have a degree in theater, but I sort of continue to pick things up from my toolbox. That's like, if this character were a statue in an Italian statue garden, like what would the pose be? Right. How is this person physically at their most iconic? Those are really fun to play with.
And tell me, because that's interesting. Because I always want to get actors to talk more about stuff like this. Like somebody might make fun of that exercise, and another person might be like, "No, this is why this is important. And this is helpful." But just tell me why that's helpful. Putting the character into that Italian sculpture.
I mean, I use like cliche. I mean, it's sort of a play on cliches, which is something that David Morris talked a lot about. But Eric Morris? David Morris?
Eric Morris.
Eric Morris, sorry. Yeah, Eric Morris talked
Stop
about...
acting?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like cliches are really helpful, especially when you're dealing with, like, again, like a TV script in front of you. You get it a night before and you have to go in and have like something fully developed. So you use a cliche, which is like a tiny snippet of a line or something that just sort of triggers something really alive in your body. Like, for example, like a cliche for a character that was just kind of rampantly running their mouth and being overly controlling and kind of egotistically empowered is like, fuck it, we'll do it live. Like, that's the cliche. And then you sort of know that from the first line, second line, third line, fourth line, that that's the kind of thing that's coursing through your body.
Yeah.
Doing something like what pose would they be in if they were a statue is the exact same thing in a physical version.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But you can also do fun things like, you know, way back in the day when I was studying acting, it's like, what part of your body does this character lead from? Do they lead from their nose? Do they lead from their hips, their toes? Like, all of these things are just stuff you can try on in your body that help you discover the answers to those bigger questions about the essence of a person, without needing to be like, I'm a different human being. Because so many, I mean, on film, it's like, it can be so different from theater. It's like, it's going to be your face. It's going to be your face. It's going to be your body. And probably you're going to have to stand pretty still because, you know, it's a long shot. It's conversation. Not going anywhere. So how do you like embody something that just feels a little bit tuned in to who the director's looking for, what they've been trying to find?
I think that's so interesting.
I have a harder time with exercises which I probably realistically should be doing more, which is like watching myself in the mirror. Like, I'm less interested in that kind of stuff, and I can see why that makes an actor an easy target. And I hate that. I hate that even I feel that way sometimes. But a good way to look at it is like, that's exactly how an impersonation is built. You seek out mannerisms. So if you're not basing if your character isn't based on a real person, how do you find their mannerisms? You have to just get curious.
I want you to leave all politeness out of this next
section. All right.
You were nice enough to join me in a little project over the weekend.
Yeah.
I think it'd be very interesting just for you to directly to the director. I've never had this on the show. What could this director, who happened to have been me, what could I have done better for you? I mean, you knew that this was going to be done very quickly. This was a little short scene.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, even if it was a disaster, it wouldn't have hurt you that much. You know, you kind of gave up a few hours for me.
Yeah.
So it's not like, you know, you weren't expecting much anyway in terms of a thing. But I always want to know, what does a specific actor need from a director that, and when they didn't get it, I think it's good for a director to know that, and people might be listening that might be eventually working with you.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, obviously, I'm imagining, like, if we had been able to rehearse some of this, would have been great, right?
Yeah, less problematic. I mean, the sections we were shooting, it felt, and the space that we had, it's not like we were like looking for physical, you know, to discover physical freedom.
Yeah.
I think like the only thing I would say is like having a sense of vision.
Yeah.
I don't think that you were per se lacking in that, but like even there was like a moment where it was like, I could tell you were adjusting the shot for me, which like felt flattering to me. And I was like, oh, good, something that I'm doing is working. And that's not necessarily a symptom that something's wrong. But I always feel, I'm always comforted by the idea that I'm coming in and someone sort of has a plan.
Yeah.
But I think like I had a great time, and the shoot was exactly what I had expected, and a super respectful set. And I thought we were able to work really quickly. That's always a good sign. I mean, not getting stuck in the mud on those turn and burn situations where you just start looking to create something on a shoestring budget with limited resources. It's like, to be able to get through that, for me, it always makes it worth it. I'm like, great.
Yes.
If it's not, if it's not difficult for me, it's easy.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
But yeah.
There was one moment where I told you something and you said, that's an emotional adjustment.
Oh yeah, sure.
Not a
physical
adjustment.
Not a physical adjustment. Yeah, for sure.
I thought, oh, that's interesting. But that made me think, oh, that's scary, because that seems like a bigger adjustment. Like that would have been something to have worked out if we had time.
No, I mean, I think in that, I remember the specific instance, and it was, the thing that's interesting about it is, it was the exact same movement. It was slowed down, and the communication was less, like, I was sort of storming away from him as if what he had said had really like affected me.
Yeah.
And that made it faster.
Yeah.
And it made me turn away from him. And what you had wanted was for it to affect him, for me to affect him in a really specific way with the line. Right. So that meant I had to slow down. I had to stay closer to him. I had to lower my voice to make impact.
Yeah.
So that's why, to me, that was an emotional adjustment.
Yes.
Or you could have also given me the note to, that same exact result would have been had if you'd said, slow down, take your time with him, make sure it lands, and then back up and take your seat.
Right.
But I think we were also problem solving.
But what you just said right there is a better way to say it.
I mean,
it's more direct to an actor. I mean, that's something good to learn. Like, speaking that language.
Yeah.
It also helps you play it better.
Yeah. I think so. But I think a really smart actor would know that too. If like, just to turn to I have the courage to turn to the director and be like, oh, I see what you're doing. Like, I'll slow down. Let me try something else. Yeah. It's the exact same thing as that's an emotional adjustment. Yeah. It doesn't have to be, it's not always, I don't know, like so dramatic, for lack of another term, for an actor to just try something else. Like, that's what we do professionally. Right. So give us the opportunity. We'll take it.
Speaking of opportunity, is there some role that you want to be given the opportunity to play that you haven't yet?
I know, yeah. I just worked on Teresa Rebeck's play called What We're Up Against. And I was super drawn to this play because it involved two women that had scenes, like, not to speak to Bechtel test, but like, there were two women in conflict, not about a man. And I think like that is really lacking in my life and the things that I go in for. Two women in conversation that's not about a man is great. Two empowered women, two really smart women. That was super cool. When people ask me like what my dream role is, I always say Tess McGill from Working Girl, because I think it was such a perfect cocktail of like a director who really wanted to play but also had a strong vision, like Mike Nichols. R.I.P. He was on my dream list of directors to work with for a million years. She's smart, sexy, takes risks. Yes, has romantic relationships, but they're not totally disempowering. That's not where like everything is coming from. It's just happenstance. So I dream of roles like that, where like a really complete version of a woman is being represented. And usually that means a bigger role. Like, it's so hard to do that in these supporting roles, to make a full and complete version of someone. But I've been thinking a lot about Ridley Scott too. Ridley Scott has made so many amazing films about strong women. Like, I did Thelma and Louise last month for Score, and like either one of those roles was just dynamite. Like, fully complex individuals living and breathing in the real world. But honestly, I love to play, like, and I'm always, as you saw, like, I love to come in and, as a person who had the experience of being a woman, granted a white woman, which I totally accept, but I love to come in and work with writers and be like, this is an area where there's an opportunity to do something bigger or more interesting. Like, what are you open to? What can we find together? I'm your girl for that. Like, I'm all for sending me the thing that I might have a problem with and still coming on board to try to collaborate. That's how the work gets done.
Emmy Harrington, thank you.
Thank you. Yes. So happy to be here.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of IFP, the Independent Filmmaker Project. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.